I am Abigail Richards, 28 years old, and I watched my sister Eleanor nervously approach the hospital board meeting. 6 years ago, I was scheduled for emergency spinal surgery the same day as her college graduation. My parents chose her ceremony despite my tearful pleas. I woke up alone in recovery, scrolling through their celebratory photos while fighting excruciating pain. Now Eleanor has applied to work at Boston Memorial, where I am chief resident. She has no idea what awaits her here. If you're watching this right now, I can feel your blood pressure rising already. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any surgical knife I've ever used. Before I continue with how karma eventually came full circle in this hospital, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that subscribe button if you've ever been the forgotten child in your family, and stay tuned to see how years of being second best finally led to the most satisfying moment of justice I never planned. Growing up in Portland, I was always the responsible older sister. From the time Eleanor was born when I was 2, our family dynamic was set in stone. I can still remember my mother rushing to Eleanor's crib at the slightest whimper while telling me to be a big girl whenever I needed comfort. This pattern only solidified as we grew older. My earliest memory of the favoritism was my 7th birthday. My parents had promised a small party at the local ice cream parlor with 5 friends. The morning of my birthday, Eleanor, then 5, decided she wanted to go to the Children's Museum instead. Within minutes, my carefully planned party was canceled. My friends' parents were called with apologies, and we spent my birthday following Eleanor around exhibits she wanted to see. When I cried in the bathroom, my father told me that making your sister happy should make you happy too. That was the day I learned my feelings came second. While Eleanor received elaborate birthday celebrations with custom cakes and dozens of friends, mine were often forgotten or postponed due to her dance recitals or school events. When I brought home straight A's, my accomplishments were expected and briefly acknowledged. When Eleanor managed to get B's, there were rewards and celebrations for her improvement. My passion for medicine began early. At 12, I received a children's anatomy book that I read until the pages wore thin. I would spend hours studying while Eleanor would interrupt my concentration, demanding I play with her or help with homework she hadn't bothered to start until the last minute. My parents never redirected her. Instead, they would say, "Abby, you know how Eleanor gets when she feels ignored." High school intensified the contrast. I joined science clubs, volunteered at the local hospital, and maintained perfect grades. I still remember the crushing disappointment when my parents missed my state science competition finals to attend Eleanor's dance recital preliminary round. She didn't even advance to finals, yet their absence at my event, where I won first place, was deemed necessary because Eleanor needs confidence boosters. The most telling incident came during my junior year. I had been saving for a prestigious summer medical program that would significantly boost my college applications. 2 weeks before the deposit was due, my parents sat me down and explained they had used my college fund to pay for Eleanor's last-minute acceptance to an exclusive European summer arts program. "You'll get scholarships anyway," my mother said dismissively. "Eleanor needs this opportunity for her development." I worked 2 part-time jobs to rebuild my savings while maintaining my grades and extracurriculars. Meanwhile, Eleanor's social media was filled with photos of her European adventure, always with captions thanking our parents for believing in her dreams. Family vacations were invariably planned around Eleanor's schedule and preferences. If she wanted the beach, we went to the beach, even though the sun triggered my migraines. If she wanted to skip a planned museum visit because she was not in the mood, the entire day's itinerary would shift to accommodate her. Throughout these years, I fought an internal battle between family loyalty and growing resentment. I loved my sister in those rare moments when she wasn't competing with me or undermining my accomplishments. I wanted to believe my parents loved us equally, but simply didn't realize how their actions appeared. I made excuses for them, blamed myself for being too independent, or not expressing my needs clearly enough. It was during my sophomore year of high school that my spinal issues began. Initially diagnosed as scoliosis, It progressed to include nerve compression that would sometimes leave me in debilitating pain. My parents often suggested I was exaggerating for attention when I couldn't participate in household chores, yet Eleanor was immediately taken to specialists for any minor ailment. Eleanor's competitive nature extended beyond parental attention. When I was accepted to the school newspaper, she suddenly developed an interest in journalism. When I began dating Michael from my chemistry class, she found reasons to join our study sessions, wearing revealing clothes and laughing excessively at his jokes. 2 weeks later, Michael confessed he thought Eleanor might be more his type. It was the first of several relationships undermined by my sister's interference. By graduation, I had been accepted to several prestigious universities with pre-med programs. At the dinner celebration, which was kept small because Eleanor had finals the next day, my sister announced she might also be interested in medicine. My parents immediately began discussing how they could help her pursue this new interest, completely derailing the conversation about my accomplishments. I saw the pattern so clearly then. My path was always meant to be walked first by me, then claimed and celebrated when Eleanor followed. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision that would guide my next years. I would continue to love my family, but I would no longer expect them to prioritize me. I would build my life with the understanding that I was, essentially, on my own. This realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. The responsibility of being the forgotten daughter had shaped me into someone fiercely independent and determined. These qualities would serve me well in the challenging years ahead, though I had no idea just how much I would need them. My undergraduate years passed in a blur of labs, exams, and clinical observations. I was accepted into a top-tier medical school on a partial scholarship, still working part-time to cover the remaining costs. Meanwhile, Eleanor had indeed followed me into pre-med for exactly 1 semester before switching to communications, then business, then finally settling on hospital administration, a field she described as like medicine but without all the gross stuff. Throughout these years, my spinal condition continued to worsen. The occasional sharp pains became more frequent, and I started experiencing numbness in my right leg. Between classes, I visited specialists who monitored the progression of what was now diagnosed as degenerative disc disease with nerve impingement. Each visit brought recommendations for surgery, which I continually postponed. Medical school was too important, the recovery time too lengthy. I managed with physical therapy, pain medication, and sheer determination. By my final year of medical school, I was excelling academically despite my health challenges. I had secured a prestigious residency position and was researching specialized surgical techniques in neurology. Eleanor, meanwhile, was in her senior year at an elite college our parents had strained themselves financially to afford. Her social media portrayed a glamorous college experience. Parties, spring break trips, and constant shopping expeditions for new clothes and accessories. The crisis came, without warning, in April. I was reviewing case studies in my apartment when the pain exploded through my lower back and down both legs. I collapsed, unable to move, the agony unlike anything I'd experienced before. My roommate found me an hour later and called an ambulance. At the hospital, MRIs revealed a severe herniation with fragments compressing my spinal cord. The neurosurgeon was blunt. Without immediate surgery, I risked permanent nerve damage and possible paralysis. The surgery was scheduled for May 15th. As I lay in the hospital bed, making arrangements for my classes and upcoming exams, I realized with a sinking feeling what that date meant. May 15th was Eleanor's graduation day, an event that had dominated family conversations for months. I called my parents that evening, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. The surgery was high risk, involving microdiscectomy and possible fusion. The recovery would be painful and challenging. I needed their support, not just practically but emotionally. For once, I explicitly asked for what I needed. Mom, Dad, I know it's Eleanor's graduation, but this is serious. The doctor says postponing even a few days increases the risk.
I'm scared.
I need you here. The silence on the other end of the line lasted several seconds too long. Then my mother said she would call Eleanor to discuss options. An hour later, my phone rang. Abby, my mother began, her voice carrying that familiar placating tone, we've talked it over with Eleanor, and you have to understand this is her special day. She's worked so hard for this moment. I'm having emergency spinal surgery, I repeated, thinking perhaps they hadn't understood the severity. And you'll have the best doctors, my father interjected. You're in a hospital already. Eleanor needs us there for support. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. So is potential paralysis, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. The conversation continued with increasingly desperate pleas from my side and increasingly thin justifications from theirs. Eleanor eventually came on the line, sniffling dramatically. I can't believe you're trying to ruin my graduation, she said. You've always been jealous of any attention I get. Can't you reschedule it? Just a few days? I explained again that the surgery was emergency, not elective. The fragments could shift at any moment, causing irreversible damage. Well, I'm sorry about your back problem, Eleanor said dismissively, but my entire class is expecting Mom and Dad to be there. They've already booked the flights and hotel. What would it look like if they canceled now? The conversation ended with my parents' decision made. They would attend Eleanor's graduation. They promised to fly back immediately afterward to help with my recovery. I hung up the phone feeling a cold emptiness spread through me, more numbing than any anesthetic. The day before surgery, I called a friend from my study group who agreed to drive me to the hospital at 5 in the morning. I filled out all the paperwork alone, listing my roommate as my emergency contact. When the nurse asked if family would be coming, I simply shook my head, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. What my parents didn't know, what I hadn't had the emotional energy to explain, was that my surgery carried additional risks. My specific condition had created an unusual compression pattern that required the surgeon to work dangerously close to critical nerve bundles. The procedure estimated at 4 hours stretched to 7 due to complications. My blood pressure dropped dangerously low twice during the operation. The surgical team had to remove more disc material than anticipated, requiring a partial fusion that hadn't been in the original plan. I woke up in recovery, disoriented, and in excruciating pain. The anesthesiologist had warned me the pain would be significant, but nothing prepared me for the reality. As consciousness returned in waves, I became aware of two things: the searing fire along my spine and the empty chairs beside my bed. A nurse noticed I was awake and came to check my vitals. "Is anyone here for you, honey?" she asked, her eyes kind behind her mask. "No," I managed to whisper. "No one could make it." She frowned slightly, then squeezed my hand. "I'll check on you extra then." In the haze of pain medication, I reached for my phone on the side table. There were no missed calls from my parents, no text messages asking how the surgery had gone. Instead, my social media feed was flooded with their posts from Eleanor's graduation. My mother's caption read, "So proud of our beautiful graduate. The most special day for our family." Photos showed them beaming beside Eleanor in her cap and gown, at the ceremony, at the celebratory lunch afterward, at the evening party. Not a single mention of their other daughter fighting through a life-altering surgery alone. Eleanor had posted a selfie with my parents, captioned, "Best day ever with the people who matter most," as if my absence was not even worth acknowledging. As I scrolled through the images, a tear slid down my cheek and onto the hospital gown. That evening, as I drifted in and out of consciousness, I became aware of someone sitting beside my bed. Opening my eyes, I saw not my parents or sister, but the nurse from earlier. Her name tag read Rachel. Her shift had ended 2 hours ago, but she had stayed, concerned about the patient with no visitors. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," she said simply. "The first night after spinal surgery is the hardest." Rachel stayed for hours, helping me manage the pain spikes, talking to me about her own family when I needed distraction, and simply being present when I needed silence. When my parents finally called the next morning, full of stories about Eleanor's magical day and vague questions about my procedure, I let the call go to voicemail. Something fundamental had shifted. The thread connecting me to my family had not just frayed, it had severed completely. In that hospital room, With a spine newly pieced together with titanium and bone grafts, I made my second life-defining decision. I would rebuild my life, without them at its center. The pain of their absence had crystallized what years of favoritism had suggested. In their hierarchy of love, I would always come second. It was time to create a world where that was no longer true. Has someone in your family ever let you down when you needed them most? That moment in the recovery room was my breaking point. Sometimes I wonder how many of you have had to face a similar realization about the people who should have been there for you. Stick around to see how I rebuilt my life and career and the unexpected way my sister came crashing back into it years later. Recovery from spinal surgery is a special kind of hell. Each movement requires calculated precision. Pain becomes your constant companion, fluctuating between barely tolerable and utterly consuming. For me, the physical recovery was complicated by the emotional wounds that felt just as raw. My parents arrived 2 days after my surgery, breezing into my hospital room with gift shop flowers and graduation cake left over from Eleanor's celebration. They seemed genuinely surprised by my frosty reception. "We came as soon as we could," my mother said, arranging the slightly wilted flowers beside my bed. Eleanor's post-graduation brunch ran longer than expected. My father added, "The surgeon said everything went well, right? See, you were in good hands. And now we're here to help with recovery." I looked at them, really looked at them. Perhaps for the first time seeing them not as the parents I wished they were, but as the people they actually were. "I'm being discharged tomorrow. My roommate is helping me. You can go home." "Don't be ridiculous," my mother scoffed. "You'll need help. We'll stay for a few days." "Like you stayed for my surgery?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, my father said, "Abby, you're an adult." Eleanor needed the emotional support more. "You've always been the strong one." "I needed you." My voice was quiet but steady. "I asked for you. Once. The one time I explicitly asked and you chose her. Again." "That's not fair," my mother began, but I cut her off. "Please leave. I mean it. I'll call when I'm ready to talk." They left, confused and slightly indignant, not understanding that a fundamental shift had occurred. I didn't call them for 3 weeks, and when I did, it was a brief, factual update on my recovery. No emotions, no accusations, just information provided to people who now felt more like distant relatives than parents. During those early recovery weeks, an unexpected friendship formed. Rachel, the nurse who had stayed with me after surgery, continued to check on me even after her shifts. She lived near my apartment and began stopping by with groceries or simply to provide human contact during those isolated days of recovery. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her one evening as she changed my surgical dressing. She was quiet for a moment before responding. "I had a brother who died of leukemia when I was 14. The night he passed, a nurse stayed with our family hours after her shift ended. She made the worst night of our lives slightly more bearable. I promised myself I'd do the same when I became a nurse. As my body slowly healed, I made decisions about my future. I had been accepted to residency programs across the country, including one in my hometown near my parents. The choice became obvious. I would complete my residency at Boston Memorial Hospital, 3,000 miles away from Portland. It wasn't running away, it was running toward independence. I arrived in Boston 3 months post-surgery, still in physical therapy, but determined to begin my residency on schedule. The program was prestigious and demanding, exactly what I needed to focus my energy on something besides family wounds and physical pain. By an extraordinary coincidence, Rachel had applied for and received a nursing position at the same hospital. Having a friend during those early months in a new city made the transition infinitely easier. Boston Memorial became the center of my new life. Dr. William Harrison, the chief of neurosurgery, took particular interest in my development after learning about my own spinal procedure. "The best doctors are often those who've been patients," he told me. "They never forget what it feels like on the other side." Under his mentorship, I flourished. My work ethic, forged in years of proving myself despite being overlooked, served me well in the demanding environment. While other residents complained about 80-hour weeks, I volunteered for additional cases. While they socialized after shifts, I stayed to review patient files or assist in the research lab. My dedication did not go unnoticed. By my second year, I was selected to assist Dr. Harrison on complex spinal procedures. By my third year, I had published 2 research papers on innovative approaches to disc regeneration, drawing partially from my own experience. Patients responded to my empathetic approach. I never forgot what it felt like to wake up alone after surgery, so I made sure my patients always had proper support systems in place. Contact with my family became increasingly minimal. Monthly phone calls with my parents were brief and superficial. They never visited Boston, citing the expense and distance, though they managed to fund Eleanor's post-graduation trip to Thailand and Australia. Eleanor herself rarely communicated directly with me, except to ask for money during her frequent periods of unemployment. After graduation, Eleanor struggled to find her footing professionally. She cycled through jobs in marketing, event planning, and eventually hospital administration assistance, never lasting more than 8 months in any position. My parents continued to support her financially and emotionally, expressing disappointment in my cold attitude when I refused to help Eleanor network in the medical field. "She's your sister," my mother would say during our increasingly rare phone conversations. "Why can't you be more supportive?" I never explained that support runs both ways. I never detailed how Eleanor had not called once during my recovery, never acknowledged the severity of my surgery, never expressed anything resembling concern for my well-being. Instead, I simply established boundaries and maintained them with quiet determination. As my career accelerated, I developed a new support system. Rachel became my closest friend, her straightforward compassion a balm to my lingering trust issues.
Dr.
Harrison and his wife invited me to holiday meals, treating me like the daughter they never had. Other colleagues, Dr. Lisa Chun from cardiology, Dr. Marcus Wallace from emergency medicine, became my chosen family. For years into my residency, Boston Memorial faced a leadership crisis when several senior staff left for private practice. At 37, Dr. Harrison became the youngest hospital director in the institution's history. One of his first acts was to promote me to chief resident, an unprecedented move for someone my age. "Your clinical skills warrant it," he said when I expressed surprise. "But more importantly, your approach to patient care is transforming this department. You see the whole person, not just the condition." The promotion came with increased responsibilities and visibility within the hospital. I developed protocols for pre-surgical patient support that were implemented hospital-wide. My research continued to gain attention in medical journals. For the first time, I felt fully seen and valued for my contributions. It was during this professional peak that I met Dr. James Carlton, an orthopedic surgeon who transferred from Chicago General. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared dedication to our fields. When I finally told him about my family history, expecting the usual uncomfortable reaction, he simply took my hand and said, "Their loss is immeasurable." James understood boundaries in a way few people did. He never pushed for family reconciliations or suggested I should forgive and forget. Instead, he respected my careful approach to trust and vulnerability. 6 months into our relationship, he gave me a key to his apartment with the simple words, "No pressure, just an option when you want it." Meanwhile, my parents continued their pattern of Eleanor-centered existence. When she experienced a minor car accident, no injuries, just vehicle damage, they flew immediately to Portland to support her through the trauma. When I mentioned during a phone call that I was being considered for a prestigious fellowship, my mother changed the subject to Eleanor's new apartment. 5 years after my surgery, I received an unexpected call from my father. His voice sounded older, tired in a way I hadn't heard before. "Your mother and I are having some financial difficulties," he admitted after awkward small talk. The market downturn hit our retirement accounts hard. What he didn't say, what I learned later, was that they had been supplementing Eleanor's income for years, paying her rent when she quit jobs impulsively, covering credit card debts she accumulated. Their retirement fund, once substantial, had dwindled to dangerous levels. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuine despite our distance. "Do you need help?" "No, no," he backpedaled quickly. "We'll figure it out. Eleanor has a promising job interview coming up. Things should turn around soon." I offered to review their finances, to connect them with a financial advisor I knew in Portland. My father declined, seeming embarrassed by the momentary vulnerability. The conversation ended with the usual awkward goodbye, but something in his tone lingered with me. It was the sound of consequences beginning to materialize after years of enabling one child at the expense of another. I had no idea then that those financial difficulties and Eleanor's promising job interview would collide with my carefully constructed new life in ways I couldn't possibly anticipate. The hospital that had become my sanctuary was about to become the battlefield for a family reckoning 6 years in the making. The morning that changed everything began like any other. I arrived at Boston Memorial at 5:30, reviewed overnight patient developments, and prepared for morning rounds. Rachel met me at the coffee cart in the main lobby, our daily ritual before separating to our respective departments. "You look extra intimidating today, Dr. Richards," she teased, handing me my usual black coffee. "Good. I have residence evaluations this afternoon. A little intimidation keeps them on their toes." We parted ways, and I headed to my office to check emails before rounds. Among the usual administrative notices and research updates was a message from Diane in Human Resources with a subject line, "Candidate Review Request, Admin Position." Boston Memorial was hiring for a newly created position, Director of Patient Experience and Administrative Efficiency. The role combined patient advocacy with operational oversight, a prestigious position with significant influence on hospital policy. As chief resident, I served on the interview committee for senior positions, reviewing qualified candidates before final selection. I opened the email and froze. Among the 5 shortlisted candidates was a familiar name, Eleanor Richards. My first thought was that it must be a coincidence. Surely there were other Eleanor Richards in healthcare administration. But the attached resume confirmed my fears. There was my sister's smiling professional photo, her education history, including the college graduation my parents had chosen over my surgery, and a suspiciously impressive list of accomplishments in hospital administration. More disturbing was the personal statement where she wrote, "My passion for healthcare administration was inspired by my sister, a physician at Boston Memorial. Watching her dedication to patient care motivated me to find my own path in healthcare, supporting the vital work of medical professionals from the administrative side." I had never inspired Eleanor's career choices. If anything, she had followed me into healthcare after several failed attempts at finding her own path. The blatant manipulation of our relationship for professional advantage made my stomach turn. I immediately called Diane in HR. "Did you notice the relationship between this candidate and me?" I asked after pleasantries. "Yes, Dr. Richards. She actually mentioned it during her preliminary phone interview. Said you didn't know she was applying because she wanted to surprise you. Should I be concerned?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remain professional. "I'll need to recuse myself from the initial interview process due to the personal connection. But please keep her application active. She should be evaluated on her qualifications like any candidate." After hanging up, I sat at my desk, memories flooding back. Eleanor taking credit for organizing a charity fundraiser I had planned entirely. Eleanor telling my high school boyfriend that I had cheated on him when I hadn't. Eleanor accidentally spilling coffee on my college application essay the night before it was due. A lifetime of small sabotages and claimed accomplishments. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Dr. Phillips, the hospital director who had taken over when Dr. Harrison retired last year, entered with a concerned expression. "Abigail, I just received an interesting call from HR about the administrative position." I nodded. "My sister. I was just about to come speak with you about it." He sat across from me. "This puts you in an awkward position. I understand you'll need to recuse yourself from the initial review." "Yes, that seems appropriate. However," he continued, "your assessment of candidates at the final stage is invaluable. The position works closely with surgical departments. Your perspective will be crucial for the final decision. I can be objective, I assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at me. I have no doubt. Your professionalism is well established. He paused. May I ask, will this create any personal complications? Family working together can be challenging in the best circumstances. I considered my words carefully. Dr. Phillips, my sister, and I are not close. I hadn't heard she was applying for this position, which suggests she didn't feel it necessary to discuss it with me first. He nodded thoughtfully. I see. Well, the preliminary interviews are next week. The committee will narrow to 3 candidates, and final interviews are the following Monday. You'll join us then. After he left, I tried to focus on patient files, but my mind kept returning to Eleanor's application. I pulled it up again, reviewing her work history more carefully. The positions were accurate. I had heard about most of them during brief family calls, but the accomplishments seemed exaggerated. Increased departmental efficiency by 35% at a job she'd held for only 5 months. Developed innovative patient satisfaction protocols at another position she'd complained was mind-numbingly boring. My office phone rang again. It was the main reception desk. Dr. Richards, there's a visitor here for you. And Eleanor Richards? She doesn't have an appointment, but insists you'll want to see her. My heart rate accelerated. I'll be right down. In the 6 years since my surgery, I had seen Eleanor only twice, brief, awkward encounters during rare visits home for holidays. Now she stood in our hospital lobby, designer handbag over her arm, hair perfectly styled, looking completely out of place among the medical staff rushing past. Surprise, she exclaimed when she saw me, arms outstretched as if expecting a hug. When I didn't move forward, she dropped her arms with a slight pout. Well, that's a chilly reception for your only sister. Eleanor, this is unexpected. My voice remained professionally neutral. I'm between patient consultations. What brings you to Boston? My interview, of course. Didn't HR tell you? I'm up for the new administrative position. She looked around the lobby with evaluating eyes. Nice place. Bigger than I expected. They informed me this morning. You might have mentioned it yourself before applying. She waved dismissively. I wanted it to be a surprise. Can you imagine? The Richard sisters taking over Boston Memorial together. She linked her arm through mine as if we were co-conspirators. We should grab lunch. I want all the inside information before my interview. I carefully extricated my arm. I have surgery scheduled in 30 minutes, and it would be inappropriate for me to provide inside information about a position you're interviewing for. Her smile faltered. Come on, Abby. Don't be so serious. It's not like I'm asking for the interview questions. Just some general tips about the hospital culture, what they're looking for. Sister stuff. I serve on the hiring committee, Eleanor. Any advice beyond what's available to all candidates would be unethical. But you're my sister, she said, as if this fact alone should override professional ethics. Which is why I've recused myself from your initial interview. Her expression hardened. Seriously? I thought you'd be excited. We could finally be close again, working together. When were we ever close? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Eleanor rolled her eyes. Don't start with a childhood rivalry thing again. We were kids. It's ancient history. I took a deep breath. My office isn't the place for this conversation. Why don't we meet after my surgery? Around 4? She brightened immediately. Perfect. I'll go shopping downtown and come back. Your office or the cafeteria? My office. 2nd floor, East Wing, room 2340. As I watched her leave, her heels clicking confidently across the lobby floor, a complex mixture of emotions washed over me. Anger at her presumption, anxiety about the potential workplace complication, and underneath it all, a small, unwelcome flicker of the old pain, the automatic sense that somehow, once again, Eleanor would find a way to insert herself into the life I had carefully built without her. During surgery, I forced these thoughts aside, focusing entirely on the lumbar fusion before me. But afterward, as 4 o'clock approached, the tension returned. I straightened my desk compulsively, as if preparing for an inspection rather than a conversation with my sister. Eleanor arrived 15 minutes late, carrying shopping bags and a takeout coffee. "This hospital is like a maze," she complained, settling into the chair opposite my desk. "They really should have better signage." "The signage is quite clear if you follow it," I replied, then immediately regretted the defensive tone. "How have you been, Eleanor?" "Honestly, things have been tough." She set down her coffee with a sigh. "That's partly why I applied here. I need a fresh start, and Boston seems as good a place as any." "What happened with your last position?" "In Seattle, wasn't it?" She waved vaguely. "The hospital was downsizing. Budget cuts, you know how it is. I was last in, first out." She didn't mention that she'd been there less than 6 months. "But it's fine. This position actually pays better, and Boston Memorial has a much better reputation. It's a senior position with significant responsibilities," I said carefully. "The competition will be substantial. That's where you come in." Her smile turned conspiratorial again. "You're on the committee, right? Put in a good word for me." "Eleanor, I just explained." I know. Ethics and all that." She rolled her eyes. "But come on. That's just what you say publicly. Everyone helps family behind the scenes." I studied her face, realizing she genuinely believed this. In her world, rules existed to be bent, especially for family. It had never occurred to her that I might actually value professional integrity. "That's not how I operate," I said firmly. "And it's not how Boston Memorial operates. This position will go to the most qualified candidate." Her expression darkened. "So, you're not going to help me at all? After everything our parents did for you?" The audacity of the statement left me momentarily speechless. "What exactly do you think they did for me? Put you through medical school, for starters. Do you have any idea how expensive that was? They're still recovering financially. I had scholarships and loans, which I'm still paying off. They contributed less than 20% of my educational costs." She dismissed this with another wave. "Whatever. The point is, they supported you. We all supported you. And now you have this fancy career and won't even help your own sister get a job at your hospital. You have a job interview. That's the standard process. What happens after depends on your qualifications." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Look, I really need this, Abby. Things with Mom and Dad are complicated right now. They can't help me anymore." "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "They're having money problems. Dad's investment portfolio tanked, and they had to refinance the house. They've been helping me out since graduation, but they just can't anymore. So you decided to follow me to Boston and apply at my hospital? It makes sense. I have experience in hospital administration. You're already established here, and the position is perfect for me." Her voice softened, became almost pleading. "Plus, it would give us a chance to reconnect. Don't you miss having family around at all?" The question struck closer than I wanted to admit. Despite everything, there were moments when the absence of family connections left an ache. Holidays spent with friends instead of relatives. No parents to call with good news. No shared childhood memories with the people who were there. "Eleanor," I said carefully, "I've built a life here. A good life, with people I trust and respect. If you want to be part of that life, it needs to be on terms of mutual respect. Not manipulation or expectations of favors." She seemed ready to argue, then paused, considering.
"Fine. No faves."
"Just don't actively work against me either, okay? I'll evaluate your application exactly, as I would any candidate's. That's all I can promise." She nodded, apparently satisfied with this minimal concession. Then, as if the tense conversation hadn't happened, she brightened. "So, tell me about Boston. Where are the good neighborhoods to live?" "If I get this job, I'll need to find an apartment." For the next 20 minutes, we had the most normal conversation we'd shared in years, discussing Boston neighborhoods, restaurants, and the brutal winters. It was almost pleasant, this glimpse of what a normal sister relationship might feel like. As she prepared to leave, Eleanor paused at the door. By the way, I never really understood why you made such a big deal about that surgery years ago. It was just a back procedure, right? And everything turned out fine. The casual dismissal of what had been a life-altering medical crisis and profound betrayal stunned me. Before I could formulate a response, my office phone rang, an emergency consultation in the ER. "I have to take this," I said, reaching for the phone. Eleanor nodded. "I'll see you at the interview then. Thanks for the Boston tips." After she left, I sat motionless, the phone forgotten in my hand. Her parting comment revealed what I should have already known. Eleanor had never understood the magnitude of what happened 6 years ago. In her mind, it had been a simple choice between a routine medical procedure and a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. The depth of my pain, both physical and emotional, had never registered in her reality. That evening, as I recounted the encounter to Rachel over dinner at my apartment, I struggled to articulate the complex emotions Eleanor's visit had triggered. "She wants the job because she's broke and our parents can't support her anymore," I explained. "But she genuinely seems to think working together would somehow fix our relationship, as if proximity alone could erase years of history." Rachel, who had heard the full story of my surgery and family abandonment years ago, shook her head. "She still doesn't get it, does she? About the surgery? She called it just a back procedure before leaving my office. Said she didn't understand why I made such a big deal about it." Rachel's expression hardened. "You nearly died on that table, Abby. Your BP crashed twice. I remember watching the monitors and thinking we might lose you." "She doesn't know that part. None of them do. I never told them about the complications. Maybe it's time they knew." I considered this as I absently twisted my wineglass stem. What would be the point? It wouldn't change what happened. "No," Rachel agreed, "but it might change how they understand what happened. Sometimes people need the full picture before they can truly grasp the impact of their actions." Her words stayed with me as I prepared for bed that night. For years, I had protected my family from the full truth of that day, not to spare them pain, but because I had deemed them unworthy of sharing in mine. Now I wondered if that silence had only reinforced their dismissal of my experience. As I drifted toward sleep, my phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. "Interview prep tomorrow. Wish me luck. P.S. If I get this job, we should totally be roommates to save on rent." The casual presumptuousness of the message made me laugh despite myself. Some things never changed. Eleanor would always see the world as adjusting to accommodate her desires, never the other way around. The question now was whether there was any place for her in the life I had so carefully constructed without her. Have you ever had someone from your past suddenly reappear, expecting to pick up where things left off, completely oblivious to how much you've changed? Eleanor walking into my hospital felt like worlds colliding. If you're finding this family drama all too familiar, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. I'm still learning how to navigate these situations, and honestly, knowing I'm not alone in these complicated family dynamics really helps. The story gets even more intense from here. Wait until you see what happened when she actually interviewed for the position. The day of Eleanor's final interview arrived with an unseasonable heat wave blanketing Boston. I dressed with particular care that morning, a tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek bun. The formal armor was as much for my emotional protection as for professional appearance. The interview committee consisted of 5 members: Dr. Phillips, the hospital director; Diane from Human Resources; Dr. Patel, Chief of Internal Medicine; Marcus, the outgoing Director of Patient Services; and myself. We would interview 3 final candidates, deliberate, and make our decision by end of day. I arrived early to review the candidate files one last time. Eleanor's application had advanced through the preliminary round, legitimately, according to Diane. She interviewed very well, Diane had told me. Personable, confident, with creative ideas for patient experience improvements. The other 2 finalists were Michael Thornton, with 15 years of healthcare administration experience, and Zara Mahmood, whose innovative patient advocacy program at Johns Hopkins had received national recognition. Both were significantly more qualified than Eleanor on paper. At precisely 9:30, Diane escorted Eleanor into the conference room. My sister had clearly invested in her interview appearance. Her charcoal gray suit was designer quality, her hair and makeup flawless. She carried herself with practiced confidence as she shook hands with each committee member, saving me for last. "Dr. Richards," she said formally, though I caught the tiny smirk at the corner of her mouth. "Thank you for this opportunity." "Ms. Richards," I replied with equal formality. "Please have a seat." Dr. Phillips led the initial questioning about her professional background and management philosophy. Eleanor answered smoothly, her responses well-rehearsed, without sounding robotic. She was good, better than I had expected. The charisma that had always drawn people to her worked effectively in this setting. Dr. Patel asked about her experience with physician relations, a key aspect of the position. Eleanor's answer included an anecdote about resolving conflict between administrative and medical staff at her previous hospital, a story I strongly suspected was embellished, if not entirely fabricated. When my turn came, I maintained strict professional neutrality. "Ms. Richards, this position requires a deep understanding of patient needs during vulnerable moments. Can you describe your approach to ensuring administrative efficiency doesn't compromise compassionate care?" Eleanor's eyes met mine briefly before she launched into her answer. "My approach is actually inspired by personal experience," she began. "My sister, Dr. Richards here, showed me from an early age how important the human element is in medicine. Watching her medical journey and dedication to patients taught me that behind every medical chart is a person with fears, hopes, and needs beyond the clinical. The appropriation of my life experience, particularly from someone who had been notably absent during my most vulnerable medical moment, was breathtaking in its audacity." I maintained my neutral expression as she continued. "In my previous role at Seattle Presbyterian, I implemented a patient feedback system that increased satisfaction scores by 28%. The key was listening, really listening to what patients experienced and then making actionable changes based on their input." I nodded, then asked my follow-up. "Could you walk us through how you would handle a situation where a patient has experienced a significant medical complication and feels their concerns are being dismissed by medical staff?" It was a standard question for the position, but Eleanor seemed to read personal subtext into it. She hesitated before answering. "I would first ensure the patient feels heard. Validation is crucial when someone is suffering." Her voice took on a rehearsed empathy that rang hollow to my ears. "Then I would facilitate communication between the patient and medical team, documenting concerns and following up to ensure resolution. No patient should ever feel abandoned during a medical crisis." The irony of her answer was not lost on me, but I simply thanked her and yielded to the next questioner. The remainder of the interview proceeded without incident. Eleanor performed well, though I noticed Dr. Phillips watching me carefully during some of her more grandiose claims about past accomplishments. As the interview concluded, Dr. Phillips thanked Eleanor and informed her we would be making our decision by end of day. Diane escorted her out to the waiting area while the committee took a short break before the next candidate. "Impressive young woman," Dr. Patel commented as we gathered our notes. "Perhaps a bit light on experience compared to the others, but very polished." Dr. Phillips glanced at me. "Dr. Richards, any insights you'd care to share at this point?" "I'll reserve my assessment until we've seen all candidates," I replied professionally. "As disclosed earlier, Ms. Richards is my sister, so I'm being particularly careful to evaluate her objectively." He nodded, respecting my discretion, and we prepared for the next interview. Michael Thornton's interview was solid but uninspiring. Extensive experience, but little innovation. Zara Mahmood, however, was exceptional. Her patient-centered approaches were backed by data and practical implementation strategies. Her answers reflected both compassion and administrative acumen. We broke for lunch at 12:30. As I gathered my notes, Diane approached me. "Your sister asked if you could meet her for lunch in your office. I told her you might have committee obligations."
Thank you, Diane.
"I'll speak with her briefly." I found Eleanor waiting in my office, scrolling through her phone. "How do you think it went?" she asked immediately, looking up with expectant eyes. "You know I can't discuss the committee's impressions with you, Eleanor." I'm not asking for inside information, she protested. Just your personal opinion, sister to sister. The same ethical considerations apply regardless of how you frame the question. I sat behind my desk, maintaining professional distance. We're seeing all candidates before deliberating. Her expression hardened. You're really going to be this rigid about it? I saw how you looked at me during the interview. You were judging everything I said. I was evaluating your responses, as I'm doing for all candidates. That's literally my job on the committee. But you know how much I need this position. Mom and Dad can't help anymore, and my savings are almost gone. Her voice took on the familiar wheedling tone from childhood. It would be so perfect if I worked here. We could repair our relationship, have lunch together, maybe even share an apartment to save on rent. The presumption that I would want any of these things left me momentarily speechless. Eleanor, if you get this position, and that's a significant if, our professional relationship would need to remain exactly that, professional. I have no interest in being roommates or forcing a personal relationship that doesn't exist. Why are you so cold? She demanded, hurt transforming quickly to anger. What did I ever do to you that was so terrible? The question, so genuine in its obliviousness, ignited something in me. You really don't know? I asked quietly. Is this still about that graduation thing? My God, Abby, that was 6 years ago. It was back surgery, not brain surgery. You recovered fine. It wasn't back surgery. It was emergency spinal surgery for cord compression that could have left me paralyzed. My voice remained calm despite the emotion rising within me, and I didn't recover fine. I had major complications during the procedure. My blood pressure crashed twice. They had to do more extensive fusion than planned. I spent 8 weeks in excruciating pain, unable to even use the bathroom without assistance. Eleanor's expression flickered between dismissal and uncertainty. But Mom and Dad said it was routine. They said you were being dramatic about needing them there. Did you ever ask the doctors? Did you ever call me, even once, during my recovery to check how I was doing? I was busy with graduation events and then job hunting. Besides, you seemed fine when I saw you at Christmas. 6 months later, after intensive physical therapy and pain management. Eleanor crossed her arms defensively. Everyone has surgeries, Abby. Life goes on. My graduation was a once-in-a-lifetime event. So, was nearly dying on an operating table while my family posed for graduation photos. The bluntness of my statement finally seemed to penetrate. Eleanor's perfect composure slipped, her eyes widening. What do you mean? Nearly dying? Before I could respond, a knock at my door interrupted us. Rachel poked her head in, her expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Richards, but we have an emergency in room 412. The post-op spinal fusion patient is experiencing severe hypotension and possible cord compression symptoms. I'll be right there. I stood quickly, gathering my stethoscope. Eleanor remained seated. We're not finished discussing this. Yes, we are. Medical emergency trumps family drama. Always has, always will. As I moved toward the door, Rachel's gaze fell on Eleanor, her expression changing from professional neutrality to recognition, then something harder. You're Eleanor, she said, the statement flat and uninflected. Eleanor looked surprised.
Yes.
Do I know you?
No, Rachel Blay.
But I know you. I was Abby's recovery nurse after her surgery. The one your family skipped to attend her graduation. Eleanor's mouth opened slightly in surprise. You were? I stayed with her after my shift ended, because she had no one. No family. No visitors. Just a terrified 22-year-old alone after major surgery, with post-operative complications. Rachel's voice remained professional but carried unmistakable judgment. I've worked in neurosurgical recovery for 12 years. I know the difference between routine procedures and life-threatening emergencies. Your sister's surgery was the latter. Eleanor looked from Rachel to me, confusion evident on her face. Abby never told us there were complications. Would it have mattered? I asked simply, then turned to Rachel. Let's go check on our patient. As we hurried down the hallway toward room 412, Rachel glanced at me. Sorry if I overstepped. You didn't, I assured her. It's probably the first time she's heard the truth about that day from someone she can't dismiss as being dramatic. The patient in 412 required immediate intervention, a situation eerily similar to my own post-operative complications years earlier. For the next 2 hours, I focused entirely on stabilizing him, the interview committee and Eleanor temporarily forgotten. By the time we had resolved the crisis, it was nearly 3 o'clock, time for the committee's deliberation. I hurried back to the conference room, apologizing for my absence. Medical emergencies take priority. Dr. Phillips said understandingly. We reviewed Ms. Mahmood's references while waiting. Very impressive. The deliberation process was thorough and objective. Each candidate's qualifications, interview performance, and references were discussed in detail. When Eleanor's application came under review, I forced myself to evaluate her candidacy with the same clinical detachment I would apply to any medical case. MS. Richards presents well and has creative ideas for patient experience improvements, I noted. However, her actual experience is limited compared to the other candidates, and some of her claimed accomplishments seem difficult to verify. Dr. Patel nodded in agreement. I had the same impression. Her answers about physician relations seemed rehearsed rather than drawn from genuine experience. Diane consulted her notes. Her references were positive, but somewhat vague about specific contributions. Dr. Phillips summarized the discussion. It appears Ms. Richards has potential, but lacks the substantial experience this position requires. Are we in agreement that she's third among our candidates? The committee unanimously placed Eleanor third, with Zara Mahmood the clear first choice and Michael Thornton second. By 4:30, the decision was official. The position would be offered to Zara, with Michael as backup if she declined. As the meeting concluded, Diane prepared to inform the candidates. Would you prefer I speak with your sister, Dr. Richards? Given the personal connection? No, I said firmly. Please treat her exactly as you would any candidate. Professional courtesy requires no more and no less. I returned to my office to complete patient notes, emotionally drained from the day's events. 20 minutes later, my office door burst open without a knock. Eleanor stormed in, face flushed with anger. You sabotaged me, she accused, voice rising. After everything I told you about needing this job, I remained seated, maintaining my composure. The committee made its decision based on qualifications and experience. Ms. Mahmood was the most qualified candidate by significant margins. But I'm your sister. That should count for something. In this hospital, what counts is competence, experience, and commitment to patient care. Family connections don't override those considerations. You've always been jealous of me, she spat, tears forming in her eyes. Always competing, always trying to prove you're better. You couldn't stand the thought of me succeeding here in your precious hospital. Eleanor, that's enough. My voice remained steady but firm. This isn't about childhood rivalry. It's about professional qualifications for a senior position with significant responsibilities. It's about revenge, she insisted. For that stupid surgery. For graduation. You're still punishing me for something that wasn't even my fault. No one is punishing you. You are simply not the most qualified candidate. I needed this job. Her voice cracked with genuine distress. Mom and Dad are drowning in debt because of me, because they kept helping me financially when I couldn't hold jobs. They're talking about selling the house. I thought if I got this position, I could finally help them instead of draining them. The admissions, so raw and honest, cut through my professional detachment. For perhaps the first time, Eleanor was acknowledging her role in our parents' financial troubles rather than deflecting responsibility. Before I could respond, a commotion in the hallway drew our attention. Our parents' voices, not heard in person for over 2 years, carried clearly from the reception area. We're looking for Dr. Abigail Richards, my father's voice insisted, and her sister Eleanor Richards. We're their parents. Eleanor's eyes widened. You called Mom and Dad? No, I said, equally surprised. Did you? She nodded, suddenly looking younger and more vulnerable. After talking to your nurse friend. I was upset. I wanted them to confirm that your surgery wasn't as serious as you and Rachel made it sound. Before I could process this information, my parents appeared in my doorway, looking older than I remembered and distinctly uncomfortable in the hospital setting. Abby, my mother said tentatively, it's been a long time. The family that had fractured 6 years ago was suddenly reunited in my office, the last place I would have expected or wanted such a reunion. The professional and personal worlds I had kept carefully separated were now colliding in spectacular fashion, with no clear indication of whether we would all emerge intact. My parents stood awkwardly in my office doorway, their expressions a mixture of discomfort and determination. My father looked significantly older than when I'd last seen him, his hair now completely gray, new lines etched deeply around his eyes. My mother clutched her purse tightly against her chest like a shield.
Mom. Dad.
I acknowledged them with a nod, struggling to maintain my professional composure in this increasingly bizarre situation. This is unexpected. Eleanor called us, my mother explained, stepping hesitantly into the office. She was quite upset. Something about a job interview and complications from your surgery years ago. Eleanor moved to stand beside them, forming a united front that felt painfully familiar. I told them how you're still holding a grudge about graduation day, how you influenced the hiring committee against me. That's not what happened, I said firmly. The committee made its decision based on qualifications. The most experienced candidate got the position. But you told the committee about our history, didn't you? Eleanor accused. You poisoned them against me. I disclosed our relationship for ethical reasons and recused myself from your initial interview. The final decision was unanimous among all 5 committee members. My father cleared his throat. Abby, surely there's something you can do. Eleanor really needs this position. The family connection should count for something. 6 years of separation, and this was his opening line. Not concern for my well-being or interest in my life, but another request to prioritize Eleanor's needs over professional integrity. That's not how medicine works. That's not how this hospital works, I replied, my voice cooling. Positions are earned based on merit, not family connections. But you're some kind of important doctor here now, my mother interjected. Chief resident, Eleanor said. Surely you have influence. Which is precisely why I need to be especially careful about conflicts of interest. I stood, needing the physical advantage of height. This discussion is inappropriate. My office is not the place for family matters, and I have patients who need my attention. Always the patients, my mother muttered. Always something more important than family. The irony of her statement was so profound, I nearly laughed. Yes, patients with spinal cord compression do take priority over family drama. Especially when that family couldn't be bothered to support their daughter through life-threatening surgery. Life-threatening. My father's expression shifted from entitlement to confusion. The doctors told us it was a straightforward disc procedure. Which doctors?
You never spoke to my surgical team.
You never called the hospital. You never even checked if I survived the procedure. A tense silence followed this statement. My mother looked to Eleanor, who shifted uncomfortably. That nurse, Rachel. She said there were complications, Eleanor admitted reluctantly. That Abby almost died. That's ridiculous, my mother dismissed immediately. We would have been informed if there had been serious complications. By whom? I challenged. You weren't listed as my emergency contacts. You weren't there before, during, or after the surgery. You never called to check on my condition. My father's face had paled slightly. Abby, if there were serious complications, why didn't you tell us? I stopped expecting anything from you the moment I woke up alone after surgery. The calm detachment in my voice surprised even me. Why would I share medical details with people who had made it clear my health was not their priority? Before they could respond, a knock at the door interrupted our conversation.
Dr.
Phillips entered, his expression shifting from professional to concerned as he registered the tense family tableau. Dr. Richards, I apologize for interrupting. I wanted to discuss the Johnson case, but I can come back. No need, Dr. Phillips. My family was just leaving. I gestured toward the door. Actually, Eleanor interjected, we're discussing the administrative position. There seem to have been some irregularities in the selection process due to personal bias.
Dr.
Phillips raised an eyebrow, looking between Eleanor and me. Ms. Richards, the selection process was conducted with complete transparency and professionalism. Dr. Richards properly disclosed your relationship and took appropriate steps to ensure fairness. But she influenced the final decision, Eleanor insisted. She used her position to punish me for something that happened years ago. That's a serious accusation, Dr. Phillips replied, his tone cooling. And completely unfounded based on what I observed in our deliberations. Dr. Richards was notably objective in her assessment, focusing solely on professional qualifications. My mother stepped forward. Dr. Phillips, we're Eleanor's parents. Surely you understand that families should help each other in these situations. Abby has achieved such success here. Surely she could have ensured her sister received the same opportunity.
Dr.
Philip's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. Mrs. Richards, Boston Memorial has built its reputation on excellence and integrity. We hire based on merit, not family connections. That approach is why your daughter Abigail has succeeded here, because of her exceptional skills and dedication, not because of who she knows. A slow flush crept up my mother's neck. I didn't mean to suggest. Furthermore, Dr. Phillips continued, Dr. Richards is one of our most valued physicians precisely because of her ethical standards. Any attempt to influence hiring decisions based on personal relationships would be a disservice to this institution and the patients we serve. The clear defense of my professional integrity, something my family had never prioritized, was unexpectedly moving. Dr. Phillips had known me for less than 2 years, but understood something fundamental about me that my own family had missed. The tense standoff was interrupted by another arrival. Rachel appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Excuse me, Dr. Richards, but the Rodriguez family is asking to speak with you about their father's post-operative care plan. As Rachel entered, her gaze fell on my parents, recognition flickering in her eyes. She had seen their photos during our friendship, heard stories about them over years of conversations. My mother noticed the recognition. Do we know you? Rachel straightened her shoulders. No, Mrs. Richards, you don't know me. But I know you, or at least I know of you.
I'm Rachel Winters.
I was the recovery nurse who stayed with your daughter after her spinal surgery 6 years ago. My father frowned. The surgery during Eleanor's graduation? Yes, Rachel confirmed, her professional demeanor tinged with barely concealed judgment. I stayed with Abby for hours after my shift ended because she had no family present. I was there when her blood pressure crashed during post-op recovery. I was there when she developed a spinal fluid leak that required emergency intervention. I was there when she cried from pain while checking her phone for messages from her family, messages that never came. Each statement landed like a physical blow. My parents' expressions shifted from defensive indignation to uncomfortable uncertainty. There was a spinal fluid leak? My father asked quietly. Among other complications, Rachel confirmed. The surgery that was scheduled for 4 hours took over 7. The surgeons had to perform more extensive fusion than planned due to the severity of the disc herniation and fragmentation. Dr. Richards faced months of difficult recovery and rehabilitation. But she never told us any of this. My mother protested weakly. Would it have changed your decision to attend the graduation instead? Rachel asked directly. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, but didn't answer. Dr. Phillips, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. Perhaps this discussion should continue at another time. We have patients requiring attention. Yes, I agreed quickly, grateful for the professional interruption. Rachel, please tell the Rodriguez family I'll be there shortly. My mother's composure had faltered, her earlier certainty replaced by confusion. Abby, we need to talk about this. If what she's saying is true. It is true, I confirmed. Every word. But this isn't the time or place. I have responsibilities to my patients. Always the patients, my mother repeated, but this time without the dismissive edge. Instead, Her voice carried something closer to realization. Yes, I agreed simply. Always the patience. That's what being a doctor means. Eleanor had remained uncharacteristically silent during Rachel's revelations. Now she spoke, her voice smaller than I had heard it in years. I didn't know, Abby, about the complications, about how serious it was. You never asked, I replied, not unkindly. None of you did. Dr. Phillips intervened with practiced diplomacy. Mrs. and Mr. Richards, perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting in our family lounge. Dr. Richards can join you after attending to her patient responsibilities. My father nodded, seemingly relieved by the suggestion. Yes, that would be best. We'll wait, Abby. Take your time with your patients. As they filed out, Eleanor lingered behind. I'm sorry about the job, she said quietly. I shouldn't have accused you of sabotaging me. The simple acknowledgement, so rare from my sister, caught me off guard. Thank you for saying that. Do you think? She hesitated. Do you think there might be other positions here I'd be qualified for? Something entry-level, maybe? The question revealed a vulnerability I wasn't accustomed to seeing in Eleanor. For perhaps the first time, she was approaching me without entitlement or manipulation, just a straightforward request for help. There might be, I conceded. Patient relations has several coordinator positions open. They require less experience, but still involve improving patient experience. Hope flickered across her face. Would you be willing to tell me about them? Not pull strings, just information. I can do that, I agreed cautiously, but not today. I really do need to see the Rodriguez family now. She nodded, accepting the boundary without argument, another first. I understand. Patience first. As she left to join our parents, Rachel raised an eyebrow at me. The Rodriguez family can wait 5 more minutes if you need a moment. I smiled gratefully at my friend. Thank you for everything. For being here today, for what you said to my family. For staying with me 6 years ago. That's what real family does, she replied simply. They show up when it matters. The truth of her statement resonated deeply. My parents and Eleanor were my family by blood, but Rachel and Dr. Phillips and my colleagues who respected my work, they were the family I had chosen, the people who had proven their commitment through actions rather than obligations. I took a deep breath, centering myself before facing the Rodriguez family. The professional and personal worlds I had kept separate for so long had collided today, but perhaps not as disastrously as I had feared. The truth about my surgery had finally emerged. My family had been confronted with the reality of their choices and their consequences. And in Eleanor, I had glimpsed something new, a willingness to take responsibility, to acknowledge mistakes, to approach our relationship with honesty rather than entitlement. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was something I hadn't expected or thought possible, a first step toward understanding. 1 month after the tumultuous interview day, I stood outside Mercy General Hospital, 15 minutes across town from Boston Memorial. The modern glass entrance reflected the afternoon sunlight as I checked my watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Eleanor had suggested this meeting, and despite my misgivings, I had agreed. The door slid open, and there was my sister, wearing a simple navy dress with a hospital ID badge clipped to the collar. Eleanor Richards, Patient Advocacy Coordinator. Her face lit up when she saw me. You came, she said, sounding genuinely pleased. I said I would. I maintained a careful distance, still uncertain about this new chapter. There's a coffee shop around the corner. They have those almond croissants you used to like. The fact that she remembered this small detail, a preference from years ago, surprised me. We walked in companionable silence to the cafe, ordered our drinks, and found a quiet corner table. So, I began after we settled, Patient Advocacy Coordinator. How's it going? Eleanor's smile was different from what I remembered, less practiced, more genuine. It's challenging. I'm learning so much. Turns out I'm good at listening to patients' concerns and translating them to medical staff. That's good to hear. I want to thank you, she said, fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. The reference letter you wrote for this position. I didn't expect that after everything. After my family had left Boston Memorial that day, I had indeed written a carefully worded professional reference for Eleanor, highlighting her communication skills and recommending her for entry-level patient relations positions. It had been a calculated decision, offering appropriate help without compromising my professional integrity. You are qualified for an entry-level position, I said simply. The reference was factual.
Still.
You didn't have to do it. She took a deep breath. I've been in therapy, since that day at your hospital, twice a week. This was unexpected. Really? She nodded. After what Rachel said about your surgery, after seeing how everyone at Boston Memorial respected you while I was making a fool of myself, something finally clicked. I realized I didn't like the person I'd become. The admission hung between us, raw and honest in a way Eleanor had never been. The therapist thinks I've spent my whole life being the favorite without earning it, she continued. That I never developed actual skills because everything was handed to me. She says I have entitled personality features. Eleanor made air quotes around the clinical term with a self-deprecating smile. That sounds accurate. I ventured carefully. She laughed, a genuine laugh without defensiveness.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's hard looking at yourself honestly after 30 years of believing your own hype. We sipped our coffees, the silence between us now thoughtful rather than tense. Mom and Dad are in therapy too, she added. Family counseling. They wanted me to ask if you considered joining a session sometime. Not now, she added quickly, seeing my expression. When you're ready. If you're ever ready. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready for that, I admitted. I understand. They're really struggling with what Rachel told them about your surgery. Dad keeps saying he didn't know, that no one told him how serious it was. Mom cries whenever it comes up. Their ignorance was a choice, I said, more sharply than intended. They chose not to call the hospital, not to speak with my doctors, not to check on me afterward. You're right, Eleanor agreed, surprising me again with her ready acknowledgement. They're starting to see that now. The therapist is pretty tough on them about it. I tried to imagine my parents in therapy, confronting decades of favoritism and its consequences. The image was almost impossible to conjure. How are they doing financially? I asked, changing the subject slightly. You mentioned they were struggling. Eleanor's expression turned serious. They're okay for now. They refinanced the house. I'm sending part of my paycheck home each month to help. It's not much, but it's something. The role reversal, Eleanor supporting our parents rather than constantly taking from them, represented a significant shift. That's responsible of you. First time for everything, she said with a wry smile. Look, Abby, I know we can't erase the past. What happened with your surgery? I can't fix that. None of us can. But I'm trying to be different now. To be someone you might eventually want in your life again. The vulnerability in her statement was disarming. For all our lives, Eleanor had approached relationships as entitlements rather than connections to be earned and maintained. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But trust takes time to rebuild. If it can be rebuilt at all. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness or instant sisterhood. Just openness to the possibility that people can change. We finished our coffees and walked back toward Mercy General. As we approached the entrance, Eleanor hesitated. There's a departmental meeting next month about improving cross-hospital communication for transfer patients. Boston Memorial will be sending representatives. Will you be there? Possibly. Dr. Harrison has been asking me to get more involved with inter-hospital initiatives. If you are there. She paused, visibly working to phrase her request without presumption. Maybe we could have coffee again. No pressure. I considered the request. Maybe. I'll let you know. Her smile was understanding rather than demanding. That's fair. I should get back to work. Thanks for meeting me, Abby. As I watched her walk back into Mercy General, I felt an unexpected lightness. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of something new. A relationship based on who we were becoming rather than who we had been. The weeks that followed brought gradual, cautious changes. Rachel, ever protective, remained skeptical of Eleanor's transformation. "People don't change their fundamental nature," she warned over dinner at my apartment. "Especially not that quickly." "I'm not rushing into anything," I assured her. But the Eleanor I met for coffee was different from the Eleanor who stormed into my office demanding a job. "Just be careful," Rachel advised. "You've built a good life here. Don't let family obligation pull you back into old patterns." James, who had been quietly supportive throughout the Eleanor situation, offered a more optimistic perspective. "Family dynamics can shift when the balance of power changes," he observed. "Your sister is experiencing consequences perhaps for the first time. That can be transformative." My promotion to full attending physician came 3 months after Eleanor started at Mercy General. The ceremony was attended by colleagues who had become friends and friends who had become family. Rachel stood proudly in the front row. Dr. Phillips presented the appointment with warm words about my contributions to Boston Memorial. In my acceptance speech, I thanked those who had supported my journey, making special mention of Rachel, who was there when it mattered most. I did not invite my parents or Eleanor to the ceremony. That bridge, while perhaps under construction, wasn't yet strong enough to bear such weight. 2 months later, I found myself at the inter-hospital conference Eleanor had mentioned. I spotted her immediately in the crowded auditorium, now with a new title on her badge, Senior Patient Advocate. She noticed me, but waited for me to approach rather than assuming the connection, another small but significant change. "Congratulations on the promotion," I said, gesturing to her badge. Her smile was modest rather than triumphant. "Thank you. It's still entry-level compared to your achievements, but I'm learning so much." "How did you earn it so quickly?" "I developed a communication protocol for non-English speaking patients. Simple but effective. Turns out listening to people's actual needs can lead to useful solutions." She shrugged. "Something I should have learned a long time ago." The conference session focused on improving patient transitions between hospitals. During the discussion period, I observed Eleanor handling a challenging question from a surgeon with impressive poise and thoughtfulness. She spoke about patient dignity during transfers, citing research rather than relying on charm or deflection. The Eleanor I had known would have used her personality to navigate the challenge. This Eleanor used preparation and knowledge. Afterward, we shared another coffee. The conversation flowed more easily this time, focusing primarily on professional matters, but occasionally touching on personal topics. Eleanor mentioned she had started volunteering at a rehabilitation center similar to the one where I had recovered from surgery. "It's humbling," she admitted. "Seeing people work so hard just to regain basic functions. Makes my problems seem pretty trivial." "That's good perspective," I agreed. "Mom and Dad asked about you again," she ventured carefully. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you're doing extraordinarily well professionally. That we're talking occasionally, but rebuilding trust takes time. That they need to respect your boundaries." The mature response, so unlike the Eleanor who would have pressured and manipulated, reinforced my sense that genuine change was occurring. 6 months after the interview day confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my father. Unlike previous communications, it wasn't centered on Eleanor or filled with subtle guilt trips. Instead, it contained a simple, direct apology. "Abby, I've been doing a lot of reflection and therapy about the choices your mother and I made regarding your surgery. There is no excuse for our absence when you needed us most. I understand now that this was part of a larger pattern of failing to recognize and support your needs. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I recognize the pain we caused. If you're ever willing, I would appreciate the opportunity to apologize in person. Your mother feels the same way. We are proud of the accomplished physician you've become, entirely through your own determination. With love and regret, Dad." I didn't respond immediately, letting the words sit with me for several days. The acknowledgement, while years late, was something I hadn't realized I still needed. My response was brief but honest. "Thank you for your email. I'm not ready for an in-person meeting yet, but I appreciate your acknowledgement of what happened. I'm glad you and Mom are working through these issues in therapy." The exchange opened a tentative channel of communication. Occasional emails followed, respectful of boundaries, free from manipulation. My mother sent a card on the anniversary of my promotion, containing only supportive words without reference to Eleanor or family obligations. Small steps, but meaningful ones. Nearly a year after Eleanor's failed interview at Boston Memorial, our paths crossed professionally again at an inter-hospital conference on patient advocacy. I arrived early to review my presentation and found Eleanor already there, helping organize materials for her own workshop session.
Dr.
Richards, she greeted me with professional courtesy when she noticed my presence. I was hoping to catch you before things got busy. I wanted to let you know, I'm applying for the Patient Experience Director position at Mercy General. That's a significant step up, I observed. Do you feel ready for it? She considered the question thoughtfully. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately without really considering what the role entails. Now, she paused. I think I am, but I'm also aware of how much I still have to learn. I've been honest about that in my application. That self-awareness will serve you well, I noted, genuinely impressed by her growth. I'm not expecting any special treatment, she added, but I was hoping you might attend my workshop today. Your professional feedback would be valuable. The request was reasonable and professionally appropriate. I can do that. Her workshop on communication barriers between medical staff and patients was genuinely impressive. Eleanor had developed a protocol that significantly improved patient understanding of treatment plans, particularly among vulnerable populations. She presented data, acknowledged limitations, and handled questions with competence rather than charm. When a senior physician challenged one of her points, she engaged thoughtfully rather than becoming defensive. Afterward, I offered specific professional feedback, which she received with genuine interest. As we discussed potential refinements to her protocol, I realized we were having our first truly collegial conversation, equals discussing shared professional interests rather than siblings carrying historical baggage. You've changed, I observed as we wrapped up our discussion. She nodded. Therapy helps. So does actually working for what I want instead of expecting it to be handed to me. And she hesitated. So does understanding what I did to you. What we all did. The past is the past, I said, not dismissively, but with the perspective time had granted. What matters is who we choose to be now. Speaking of choices, Eleanor said carefully, Mom and Dad are coming to Boston next month. No pressure, but they'd love to see you if you're willing. Maybe just coffee, somewhere neutral. I considered the request. A year ago, I would have refused immediately. Now, I found myself weighing the possibility. I'll think about it, I promised. 2 weeks later, I attended a difficult spinal surgery case, a young woman with a condition remarkably similar to what I had experienced. The successful procedure left me reflective about my own journey and the different paths healing can take. That evening, I emailed Eleanor. I'll meet with Mom and Dad. Coffee only, public place, 1 hour maximum. The meeting was neither miraculous reconciliation nor disastrous confrontation. My parents had aged visibly, humbled by financial struggles and the painful self-awareness therapy had forced upon them. My mother cried when she first saw me, but quickly composed herself, respecting that public emotional displays would not help our fragile reconnection. You look well, Abby, my father said, his voice carrying genuine warmth beneath the awkwardness. The hospital must be treating you right. I've built a good life here, I confirmed. The conversation that followed was careful, but not cold. They asked appropriate questions about my work, listened to my responses without interrupting or shifting focus to Eleanor. When I inquired about their financial situation, they were honest about the challenges but emphasized they were managing without burdening either daughter. Eleanor has been helping us understand where we went wrong, my mother admitted quietly. Not just with your surgery, but throughout your childhood. The therapist calls it golden child syndrome. We didn't realize the damage we were doing to both of you. To both of us? I asked, surprised by the inclusion. My father nodded. Eleanor never developed resilience or self-sufficiency because we sheltered her from consequences. And you? His voice faltered slightly. You never felt secure in our love because we made it conditional on independence and achievement. The insight. painful but accurate, suggested their therapy was more substantial than I had assumed. As the hour concluded, my mother asked hesitantly, "Could we do this again sometime?" "No pressure, only if you're comfortable." "Maybe," I replied honestly. "Let's see how it goes." The tentative reconnection with my parents paralleled Eleanor's continued growth. She received the promotion at Mercy General, calling to share the news without expectation or demands. When I congratulated her, she responded with uncharacteristic humility. "It feels different," she admitted, "earning something through actual work instead of charm or family connections. More solid somehow." "That's how it should feel," I assured her. At an inter-hospital conference, 6 months later, I watched Eleanor competently managing a crisis when a presenter collapsed mid-speech. She coordinated with medical staff, ensured the audience remained calm, and demonstrated leadership skills I wouldn't have believed her capable of 2 years earlier. As our eyes met across the auditorium, I felt something unexpected, a flicker of pride in the professional she was becoming. Later that evening, over dinner with James, now my fiancé, after a thoughtful proposal that respected my need for independence even within partnership, I reflected on the journey. "I never expected reconciliation," I admitted. "I thought that bridge was permanently burned." "Not reconciliation," James corrected gently. "Transformation. You're not returning to old relationships. You're building new ones with people who happen to share your history." His distinction resonated deeply. The relationships forming with my parents and Eleanor weren't resurrections of what was lost, but entirely new constructions built on different foundations. Respect rather than obligation, boundaries rather than enmeshment, truth rather than pretense. The past remained unchanged. My parents had still chosen Eleanor's graduation over my surgery. That wound had scarred over, but would always be part of my history. What had changed was the present, and the possibilities it held for a future different from what I had imagined. 2 years after Eleanor walked into Boston Memorial expecting special treatment, we stood together at the annual healthcare recognition dinner where I was receiving an award for my work in spinal trauma care. Eleanor had asked if she could attend, and I had welcomed her presence. My parents watched the live stream from Portland, respecting that some steps toward reconciliation required more time. As I accepted the award, I acknowledged those who had shaped my journey. To Dr. Phillips, who saw my potential. To Rachel, who stayed when it mattered most. To James, who understands that independence and partnership can coexist. And to my sister Eleanor, who reminded me that transformation is always possible when we're brave enough to face ourselves honestly. Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears as we met afterward. "I didn't expect that," she said quietly. "You've earned it," I told her sincerely. Not through blood relation, but through genuine change. We had both traveled long distances from who we once were, me from the overlooked daughter desperate for validation to a physician secure in her worth, Eleanor from the entitled golden child to a professional earning respect through merit. The journey hadn't erased our history, but it had created space for something new to grow in the clearing. Family, I had learned, was both those we're born to and those we choose. The truest connections came not from obligation but from mutual respect and genuine care. Sometimes those connections could be rebuilt after devastating breaks. Sometimes they couldn't. The wisdom lay in knowing which bridges to reconstruct and which to honor in memory while building new paths forward. As I performed surgery on a young woman with a condition similar to what had nearly paralyzed me years earlier, I thought about the circular nature of healing. My own trauma had made me a better physician. My family's betrayal had led me to build chosen connections that sustained me through challenges. Even Eleanor's entitled demands had you,